Yes, so here we have Britt West with us. He leads Spirit of Gallo as SVP and GM. He has more than 2 decades of experience in the bev alc industry, and he joined Gallo in 2018. So welcome, Britt. Thank you for coming on virtually. Oh, I'm sure. Perfect. Well, we'll just dive right in. So last year, Gallo launched, the Spirit of Gallo brand to, kind of represent and highlight the company's, spirits portfolio. So what kind of led to that rebrand, and has that rebrand just kind of changed the way that Gallo spirit portfolio is perceived now?
Well, first and foremost, I try to spend a lot of time in the field, and there's only so many times you go up to, meet with a beverage director or a bar manager, and they look at you and say, I didn't know Gallo was in spirits, before you start to realize we got to do something about this. But it really started as just a way for us to show up. I mean, as our portfolio was growing, and we were going and spending more time at things like Bar Convent in Brooklyn, Tales of the Cocktail, right? Or even things like this summit. We just wanted an umbrella under which we could show up and talk about our brands and our portfolio. I think then the second piece that kind of came along with it was it did give us the opportunity to kind of really create our own identity within Gallo, kind of our own subculture that was certainly complementary to the winery, but differentiated at the same time. So it was a two-pronged piece of that led to its success. And we're really happy with the way we feel like more and more when we're out in the industry talking to the trade, people are familiar with Spirit of Gallo, but it'll be a journey to build that identity.
Mm-hmm. Right, perfect. And so then how has Gallo's spirits portfolio kind of evolved over the years?
Well, 5 years ago, we were predominantly just a, popular, you could call it popular and premium priced brandy and flavored vodka business. Really kind of two categories that right now, aren't having the best trends. The other piece was, I mean, we were pretty non-existent on premise. So I think today, when we think about what we've done over the past 5 years, whether that's rum chata, our single malt portfolio with Dalmore, we've really tried to expand our footprint in agave-based spirits, and so we have Camarena, Don Fulano, as well as Comos. And then most recently entering the whiskey space with Horse Soldier and Mercer and Prince. We have Pink Whitney at a million case shot brand, and then now obviously RTDs. We're no longer kind of that two-legged stool of just sitting on brandy and flavored vodka as the base of our business compared to where we were 5 years ago.
Right, perfect. And we'll talk more about each of those brands a little bit, but can you share about how much of Gallo's portfolio is, or how much of Gallo's business is in spirits?
Sure. It's about 25% today. And I think then, you can pull it apart in sub-channel. It represents almost a third of the on-premise channel. So it's a significant business for us, and obviously a rapidly growing business for us.
So is there like a kind of a goal target that you want, the amount of spirits to be of the total business, or kind of let it go?
No, and my wine colleagues wouldn't. If I had a number in the back of my mind, they wouldn't like it anyway. But look, it really was as a portfolio and as a family-owned business. It was a major decision within the company. We'd been in the brandy business, since the mid '70s, and obviously that's partially a byproduct of winemaking. So to really get serious about it and enter into the space was a significant decision, and we're happy with the decision and what we've done today.
Right, perfect. And so, thinking of Gallo is such a huge wine company as well. How much strategy overlap is there, between the wine side and the spirits side, or are the two kind of siloed, or is there some collaboration? How does that work together?
So we're broken into business units, and there's on the domestic side of the portfolio, there's 3 GMs. There's 2 wine business units as well as the spirits business unit, and they're very different from my perspective. So my counterparts are really empowered to go and run their businesses the way they see fit to run their businesses, and I run my business the way I see fit to run it. Obviously, we meet regularly, but as everybody in this room will know, I mean, the wine industry is in a different place from spirits and RTDs right now. So, their strategy is reflective of where they are as an industry, and their relevant work that they need to get done is appropriate for that position, whereas mine is in a very different place. So we're colleagues and we collaborate, but I would say strategically speaking, it's very different.
Right, perfect. And kind of speaking of which, of course, High Noon is certainly a standout performer, not just in the Gallo portfolio, but just in the beverage alcohol business. And recently hit a pretty big milestone and just continues to dominate the spirits RTD segment. But you still recently said that, as big and successful as High Noon is, that there's still, a lot of work to do. So kind of talk us through, like hitting the big milestone, but then where you're seeing there can be, more.
So the one thing that maybe is different from some of my colleagues and, some of the industry dailies and things that you read through is that I don't look at things very much in terms of, oh, this is a seltzer, this is canned cocktail, or these are FMBs, and this is my share of FMBs. I mean, when I think about it, I try to really think about it from a very consumer perspective. And in my mind, I look at the world and I see that sessionable, low ABV products are working. And so if I think about all the occasions that sessionable, low ABV products, can go, the usage occasions are enormous. And that's why I believe High Noon still has so much opportunity. There are a lot of places that we are underpenetrated when it comes to that usage occasion, when the consumer is just seeking something that has that refreshing aspect to it, and with the lower ABV. So that's where my comment was coming from, is that I still believe that if you just look at it through the consumer lens, it's still very large in terms of the size of the opportunity.
So are there certain more specific areas that you're looking at in terms of kind of expanding the penetration there, or is it just wherever you can find it?
There's still an enormous amount of on-premise to continue to expand. I think as we look at things like golf courses. I mean, I'm maybe oversimplifying here, but it's a usage occasion that traditionally was not very accommodating to spirits. And you're in a golf cart and you have a solo cup and you have ice and you need a mixer and you need maybe straws, and straws aren't convenient anymore. But putting these products on a golf course, especially if you're serious about your golf game, is a way to go in and try to reach that consumer in that usage occasion. That's just one example, but I think there's many. I mean, there's a lot of places that that glass, for example, can't go. That cans are convenient to go to. Maybe enjoying a High Noon around the pool or something of that nature is also. So it's looking at those, and you can't tackle them all at once. We don't try to boil the ocean all at once, but I still believe that there's a lot of opportunity that is untapped in that regard.
Right, too. And part of that, too, I imagine, is the innovation. You also launched the High Noon Tequila Seltzer. So kind of give us an idea how that's performing.
It's gone really well. We got it out last year in time for Cinco de Mayo and kind of key seltzer season, and it crossed 2023. It left as one of the very top performing new items in IRI, and our hypothesis around it was just pretty simple. I mean, if you've looked over the past 3 years, it's obvious to everyone the growth of 80 proof tequila, and the that we were thinking about was that there was a tequila first consumer, and that was their preference. And with High Noon being vodka based, we weren't speaking to them. So offering a new tequila-based product really allowed us to speak to that tequila first consumer. And we had a hypothesis a little bit around what the cannibalization would be. And it varies by channel, but it was around 30%. So overall, we're extremely happy with it because we think we met a consumer need, and we don't see enough significant cannibalization to believe that we're not still recruiting and bringing new consumers into the High Noon franchise.
Right. Yeah. So kind of pulling at that a little bit more, how are you thinking about innovation for the High Noon brand, and plans to maybe add any other spirit bases to the lineup?
At the moment, we're gonna be coming out with an additional tequila variety pack, and really we continue to see innovation around different flavors, particularly seasonal flavors that consumers are interested by. As for other spirits bases, I'd never say never, but none in the works right now.
Right, fair enough. So kind of keeping on the RTD track here, you also recently launched the tequila RTD in partnership with the Mexican boxer called VMC. So kind of tell us how that partnership came about and maybe how that brand fits into the larger RTD strategy.
So Casa Lumbre is an organization based in Mexico, and they've been enormously successful at what they do. I mean, these are the people that started Milagro. They did the Terramana with The Rock, Montelobos. I mean, their list of high quality products that they've built goes on and on. And what's interesting about the Casa Lumbre guys is they're great at building brands on both sides of the border. And so they came and met with us, and they said, look, Canelo wants to do an RTD for Mexican and Mexican Americans. And it was really a no-brainer at that point. I mean, as we know, Canelo's, between whatever list you happen to look at, third, fourth highest paid athlete in the world. His audience and his following is enormous, and is extremely loyal to Mexican and Mexican Americans, and is a real champion of a lot of causes for them. So it came together really nicely. I mean, they were looking for a partner on it. We loved the idea about it, and Canelo's been great to work with. So so far so good.
Right, and how does that kind of, I guess, what's the differing proposition versus like what we just talked about, the High Noon tequila seltzer?
Well, I think first and foremost, it starts with the consumer, and VMC had a really specific target consumer that they wanted to go after. Do I hope it broadens from there? Of course, I hope it broadens from there. But the liquid is also very differentiated. I mean, these are low ABV, more cocktails. I mean, Paloma is a cocktail, Margarita is a cocktail, instead of seltzer and flavor based. So we're excited because the liquid is being really well received, and that's a big piece of it. And then as we start to get going with it, we've been out of stock since November. We overshipped our forecast significantly, so we're just now getting back into stock on VMC with our partners, and so we'll look as we continue to grow that business, rolling it out kind of across the Southwest and replenishing the holes that we created on the shelf.
Right, and it's more of it's the cocktail focus, right, rather than just kind of the lighter flavor option, or more of like fuller flavor, I guess maybe is what I want to say.
Yeah, I would call it fuller flavor than a seltzer, and certainly reminiscent of a cocktail, and yet still keeping it within the low ABV sessionable space.
Right. But so the difference there is that's going through beer wholesalers, right? So what factors kind of go into deciding, to choose, for a beer network versus a wine and spirits network?
So, we're thinking about this a lot as we go. I mean, honestly, and we spend a lot of time really focused on the consumer, like I mentioned earlier. And with VMC, we really felt that tall boys, C-stores, Canelo merchandising execution would all be super, super important. And our beer wholesalers to date are doing a really phenomenal job against those pieces where we felt would be important to meet the consumer in their environment. So we look at it, we go internally through a series of analysis and questions, and ultimately, hopefully, we get the right answer to what we believe with each proposition where it should be.
Right, perfect. And so, how crowded then would you say the RTD space is right now?
Well, I mean, personally, I'm still very bullish on RTDs, and there's been a lot of predictions of it slowing down. Oh, kind of doomsday sayers, but my perspective on this is that we're still in very early days of RTDs, and I think that because a lot of products, there was a huge rush into the space, and a lot of the products were undifferentiated. Quite frankly, didn't have very good liquid, really didn't have great, consumer propositions of what they were looking to achieve. And so I think we are going to see fallout. And then I think we are going to see a lot of new RTD 2.0 propositions coming into the market. But, if you just look at it from a sales to space ratio, the business is underdeveloped. And so from our standpoint, we think there are good opportunities out there in RTDs, and that it's exciting to the consumer in terms of what the propositions are and what they can be in the future.
So then the differentiation is key there, I guess, to make sure it stands apart on the shelf.
Yeah, I think differentiation is key, and I think liquid is key. I mean, we do as an industry, we don't do ourselves any favors when we put out subpar liquid. Especially in this moment where we're looking to invite Gen Z into participating in beverage alcohol and continuing to bring consumers, whatever your base type, alcohol type, whatever, right? As an industry, right? We want people to invite them into our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting out the highest quality liquid is, of top importance to us. And we do some of it at Gallo, but there's others. I mean, the Fisher's Island lemonade acquisition was partially based off of, we tried the liquid and we said, wow, Branya's really knocked it out of the park in what she's offering there. So I think it's liquid, and then being, relentlessly focused on your proposition and your target consumer.
So since you mentioned Fisher's Island, let's talk about that acquisition a little bit, and kind of how you're thinking about the new to world brands versus M&A. So Fisher's Island is a good example, and then Tequila Comos as well on the acquisition side. So how are you thinking about that?
So I think we believe that we have to be able to innovate internally within Gallo. When I started, Ernest was really clear with me about that. He said, look, I'm happy to participate in M&A, but the day we lose our ability to innovate internally, we're going to be in trouble. And so there's no hard and fast rule to what I look at to acquire versus what I look to innovation, but we have robust innovation teams that work on everything from liquid design of the future to packaging. I mean, I would say just alone that the 700 ml with the resealable cap to meet spirits needs on High Noon is a perfect example of taking innovation to a place where we didn't see possible even a few short years ago.
Right. So then I guess when you do acquire a brand, is it, because when you've tried it or you see the packaging or the branding, it just doesn't seem like something that could be, I guess, replicated or tapped into as well as that they've already done?
Listen, you need to be humble about this. I mean, we can innovate all we want, and that doesn't mean we're going to get it right 100% of the time. I don't know anybody in the industry that gets it right 100% of the time. And there are good entrepreneurs out there who bring great propositions to life. And as a developing portfolio, we have white space. And that's not to say that we're going to try to fill every white space immediately, or to say that the white space needs to be all through M&A. We do believe we can innovate internally, and quite frankly, we've been pretty successful at it. I mean, the humble brag would say, like, New Amsterdam, Pink Whitney, Camarena, High Noon, we do well at innovation. We also have had our flops. New Amsterdam Wildcard, not so much of a success. And when I think about it, it's usually when things haven't worked for us on the innovation side, it's usually been that we've tried to rush things to market. And so being a family-owned company is a bit nice, because you have the patience and the luxury of time to really make sure we get what we're trying to innovate right. And when we do go after things on the acquisition front, really making sure that it checks a number of boxes, or that maybe an entrepreneur's been good with it, but can we be good with it? Making sure that it's the type of business that we can focus on and continue to grow.
Right, perfect. We've got about a little under 10 minutes, so I'll go ahead and call for audience questions now. So if you have any, pass them down. So you mentioned Pink Whitney, so I want to talk about, I guess, initially the line extension for New Amsterdam, and that was really, really blew up. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about getting into the malt-based version that you guys launched.
Sure. Pink Whitney's one of those pieces that you could never plan on. If you had told me 2 retired hockey guys with a podcast were going to result in helping you build a 1 million case brand, I would have said, no, they are not. But look, when I take a step back and I, again, think about it from the consumer lens, and I think about it this way. In the shot category, like sweet and citrus has always been a big business, right? If whether we want to talk about lemon drops, talk about kamikazes, right? And so in doing that, Pink Whitney's almost a branded version of sweet and citrus. And so it's maybe not maybe not such a surprise at the success that it's been. The malt direction on Pink Whitney that's rolling out through beer wholesalers right now is really a function of the success we saw on Fireball. And for consumers that are agnostic on base, but are shots can be such an impulse purchase. We saw the opportunity that Fireball created in their malt version, and we believe that we can do the same with Pink Whitney.
So is it just kind of incremental, or is it opening up like different occasions for different consumers?
Beyond occasions, I mean, it opens up different doors. I mean, as we know, there are states where a malt version of that product can be in 10 times as many doors as a spirits version of it. So from a brand building and from a advertising and promotion efficiency, it makes all the sense in the world. You still got the same level of spend, but you're creating so much more access for your consumer there.
Right. All right. We got a couple audience questions here I'll toss to. So first is, does a consumer know or care if the product is F&B versus distilled spirits, assuming quality and ABV are parity, are in parity? And recently, cocktail names are used no matter if the product is malt or spirits based. So your thoughts there too?
Yeah, sure. So number one is I don't think that the consumer cares, but I think the consumer wants to understand, and I think that's being transparent and being clear about what you are and what you're not is important to the consumer, and that's obviously what we tried to do on High Noon. I mean, when seems like ages ago, but coming out and saying real vodka was to let them know what we were versus other seltzer propositions. So but I don't think that the consumer cares if you are transparent about it.
Sure. Let's see too. Are you seeing healthy runway in the ultra premium category with brands like Comos? And are you planning to bring in more of that?
So, obviously we've got a challenging economic moment, and I think when I say to my team and others, if you squint and close your eyes and look forward 3 to 5 years, do you believe we are depremiumizing or premiumizing? And if you believe that we're premiumizing, then brands like Comos have a reason to be and have a great runway ahead of them. Sure, has there been softness in the over $100 tequila segment? Yes, there has been. But Comos is up 23% and taking shares. So I just don't believe there's a world where premiumization isn't continuing across multiple price tiers, not just the $100 plus segment.
Would you say that's almost like it's too much like broad stroking for some of these trends and then not looking at like the brand level?
I think we like to look at, what's 4-week, 12-week trends versus let's look at the big picture here and stepping back. I don't think that there's a world where we are saying, yeah, the industry's de-premiumizing over the next 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Next audience question is, what role will e-commerce play for you in your pursuit of growth?
Not a large one, quite frankly. And that's because, spirits is at a disadvantage holistically, compared to wine or other categories in the e-commerce business, particularly as it relates to D2C. Do we participate? Yes. Do I think it is where we need to as a company? Not for other companies, it may be a very different piece, but is it where we need to place our emphasis right now? No, we've got plenty of other things that we need to work on as well.
Perfect. Well, Britt, I want to end on, just last month, Spirit of Gallo, announced a partnership to distribute soju in the U.S. So what drew you to that category? And are you interested, in other smaller, like at the moment, I guess in the U.S., more niche categories like that?
Yeah, so it was a very interesting one with Sunhari. I can't say that I was out actively looking for a soju, but right after when we started to return to market after COVID, I was in Austin, I was in Boston, I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and I started seeing these displays of soju up on the floor, and some of them were big, some of them were high noon size, and I thought, oh, this must just be like kind of the popularity of Korean cuisine or things of that, Korean barbecue. It's not that at all, and I was dead wrong. And it's similar to kind of what I said about Pink Whitney. When you take a step back and you look at it, and who was buying it, first of all, it was all being sold in the 375 size. So it's being bought and consumed much like an RTD, and it is fuller flavor, higher ABV, and it has a resealable lid. So those things are all on trend of a lot of other mega trends, and they come in unique flavors. And sure, the popularity of K-pop and Korean cuisine has certainly has helped in some of this regard, but I'll never forget. I was sitting in Madison, Wisconsin, at a store right at the end of Broadway, and this young man who was behind the register, I said, who is drinking this? And he turned and looked at me. He said, me. And I said, all right, I think the stereotype that I was had in my head was totally wrong. So we believe in as we've looked around, we've seen that it's popping up, and we'll get into the business and this month and really try to help grow it.
Right, perfect. All right, well, thank you so much, Britt, for joining us virtually. We appreciate it.
No, thank you, guys. I'm sorry, 3 cancer plus. This was not for a lack of trying to be there. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the whole team for all that you guys do for the industry.
Yeah, thank you. All right, awesome. Well, guys, we're off to a coffee break now. We're a little behind, so we'll meet back in about 15 minutes or so.